The American Autoimmune-Related Diseases Association estimates that 50 million Americans are currently living with an autoimmune condition. 50 million. That is a public health burden the AARDA describes as comparable to heart disease and cancer combined. But here is what that number does not tell you. Research published in Nature Reviews Rheumatology confirms that for most autoimmune conditions, the immune system begins misfiring years, in some conditions up to a decade, before a single symptom is diagnosed. Which means tens of millions of people are walking around right now with an immune system already in the early stages of turning on itself. No diagnosis, no warning, no idea. And the most common trigger is not a virus. It is not genetics. It is not something rare or unavoidable. It is something sitting in your kitchen right now. Something most households in this country use every single day. Specifically because it is considered safe, affordable, and convenient. Something that has been present in the American food supply for decades, approved by every regulatory body, recommended by mainstream nutrition guidelines, and consumed without a second thought by millions of people who are simultaneously wondering why their joints ache, why they are exhausted, why their body feels like it is fighting a war they never started. I am going to show you exactly what it is, what it does inside your immune system at a cellular level, and the one step you can take this week at zero cost that directly reduces your exposure starting today. Stay with me, because the answer is already in your kitchen, and once you see it, you will never look at it the same way again. Refined seed oils, canola oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil. These are not obscure industrial chemicals. They are in the bottle next to your stove. They are in nearly every packaged food, every fast food chain, every restaurant kitchen in the Western world. Here is why this matters specifically to you. A systematic review of studies published in the journal Advances in Nutrition, examining adipose tissue samples collected across the United States over a 50-year period, found that linoleic acid, the primary omega-6 fatty acid in refined seed oils, increased by 136% in the stored body fat of American adults between 1959 and 2008. Specifically, it rose from approximately 9.1% to 21.5% of total body fat. Listen to that again. Your body is now literally built from a different raw material than it was 60 years ago. The fatty acid composition of your cell membranes, your stored energy reserves, and your immune signaling tissue has shifted dramatically, driven almost entirely by the replacement of traditional cooking fats with refined seed oils across the American food supply. And your immune system, which runs on that same fatty acid balance, is paying the price. If you cook with vegetable oil, canola oil, or any refined seed oil, if you eat packaged or processed foods more than twice a week, this video is about you. My name is Dr. Monty Fisher. I have spent over 2 decades in clinical practice watching a pattern repeat itself with a consistency that troubled me long before the research caught up. Patients come to me exhausted, joints that ache without explanation, skin conditions that flare and recede, thyroid function that has shifted without a clear cause, digestive systems that have been inflamed for so long the patient has accepted it as their baseline. And almost every time, when I ask them what oil they cook with, when I ask them how many packaged foods they eat in a week, the answer is the same. Every time. I am making this video because the information I am about to share is not complicated. It does not require a prescription. It does not require an expensive supplement. It requires you to understand one specific biological mechanism and then make one specific change in your kitchen that directly reduces your body's autoimmune burden. The 15-minute appointment is not structured to deliver this conversation. I have watched too many patients spend years chasing symptoms that could have been addressed at the source. That ends today. Before I walk you through the specific ways these oils are triggering your immune system, you need to understand the mechanism, because without this, the connection will not make complete sense. Think of your immune system like a highly trained security force protecting a sovereign nation. Under normal conditions, that security force knows the difference between foreign threats and domestic citizens. It attacks invaders and protects what belongs. Now, imagine what happens when the security force is fed corrupted intelligence, false signals, bad data, noise that looks like a threat but isn't. Over time, the security force begins firing at the wrong targets. It attacks the thyroid, it attacks the joints, it attacks the gut lining, it attacks the myelin sheaths surrounding your nerves. That is autoimmunity. And the corrupted intelligence driving it, in millions of people, is coming from what they cook with every single day. Here is the chemistry. Refined seed oils are extraordinarily high in a fatty acid called linoleic acid, an omega-6 polyunsaturated fat. Polyunsaturated fatty acids have multiple double bonds in their chemical structure, which makes them highly unstable when exposed to heat. When you heat a seed oil, even to the moderate temperatures of everyday cooking, those double bonds begin to break down. The oil oxidizes. And in that oxidation process, it produces a class of toxic compounds called aldehydes. The most well-documented of these aldehydes is 4-hydroxynonenal, abbreviated 4-HNE. Research published across multiple toxicology journals has established that 4-HNE is both genotoxic and cytotoxic, meaning it damages DNA and kills cells. But more relevant to autoimmunity is what 4-HNE does to the immune signaling system. 4-HNE activates a molecular switch inside your cells called NF-kappa B, nuclear factor kappa light chain enhancer of activated B cells. NF-kappa B is a master regulator of your body's inflammatory response. Under normal conditions, it switches on when there is a genuine threat, an infection, an injury, and then switches off when the threat is resolved. When 4-HNE chronically activates NF-kappa B, that switch struggles to turn off. The result is a state of chronic, low-grade inflammatory activation. The immune system releasing cytokines, recruiting immune cells, maintaining a war footing against a threat that is not a pathogen. It is a cooking oil. And there is a second mechanism working in parallel. Research by Dr. Alessio Fasano at Massachusetts General Hospital, published in Clinical Reviews in Allergy and Immunology in 2012, established the connection between increased intestinal permeability and autoimmune disease. Dr. Fasano's research proposes that a breach of the intestinal barrier is a necessary precursor for autoimmune conditions to develop in genetically susceptible individuals. When the gut lining is compromised, partially digested food proteins and bacterial fragments enter the bloodstream, triggering an immune response against substances the immune system was never designed to encounter. Research has shown that oxidized linoleic acid metabolites, the breakdown products of heated seed oils, directly compromise the tight junction proteins that maintain the integrity of the intestinal wall, specifically occludin and zonula occludens 1, two of the key molecular fasteners holding the cells of your intestinal wall together. When these proteins are disrupted, gaps form in the intestinal lining. The oil you cook with is, in the most literal biological sense, opening the wall between your digestive tract and your immune system. Two mechanisms, one source, and it is in your kitchen right now. Number 1. The omega-6 to omega-3 imbalance destroys your immune system's off switch. Your immune system requires a precise balance between omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids to function correctly. Omega-6 fatty acids, including linoleic acid, are pro-inflammatory. They activate immune responses. Omega-3 fatty acids are anti-inflammatory. They resolve those responses and return the system to baseline. Research published in Experimental Biology and Medicine by Dr. Artemis Simopoulos, one of the world's leading authorities on fatty acid ratios, established that the evolutionary human diet maintained an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of approximately 1:1. The modern Western diet, dominated by refined seed oils, now sits at a ratio of approximately 15:1 to 16.7:1. In her 2016 research published in Nutrients, Dr. Simopoulos documented the ratio reaching 20:1 or higher in individuals consuming high amounts of processed foods. What that means biologically is that your immune system's resolution pathway, the biological mechanism by which inflammation is terminated, is being starved of its raw materials, while its activation pathway is flooded. The off switch is broken, not by disease, by ratio. But the second mechanism is the one most people find genuinely shocking because it is happening at temperatures you use every single day. Number 2. Heating seed oils produces aldehydes at levels that exceed the safe intake thresholds established by the World Health Organization. Research conducted at De Montfort University in Leicester, first reported through collaboration with the BBC's Trust Me, I'm a Doctor series in 2015, and subsequently confirmed through peer-reviewed laboratory analysis published in Scientific Reports in 2019, found that when seed oils such as sunflower oil and corn oil are heated to standard cooking temperatures, they produce concentrations of toxic aldehydes at levels approximately 20 times higher than the safe intake thresholds recommended by the World Health Organization. Lead researcher Professor Martin Grutfeld described the finding directly. It is a simple chemical fact that something which is thought to be healthy for us is converted into something that is very unhealthy at standard frying temperatures. These are not theoretical compounds. They are being generated in your kitchen, and the fumes rising from your pan, invisible and often present at health-relevant concentrations before their smell signals any danger, carry compounds that your body recognizes as cellular toxins. Research published in Frontiers in Nutrition has documented the adverse health effects mediated by the inhalation of cooking and frying oil fumes, and the International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified long-term exposure to deep frying fumes as a Group A2 cancer risk factor. When that exposure is repeated, every breakfast, every dinner, every meal cooked in refined seed oil, the inflammatory signals accumulate. Research links chronic aldehyde exposure and the resulting NF-kappa B pathway activation to conditions that, in genetically susceptible individuals, create the biological environment in which autoimmune disease can develop. The third one is the mechanism that connects everything, and it is the reason your gut is the battlefield. Number 3. Oxidized seed oil metabolites directly compromise the intestinal barrier, opening the pathway to systemic autoimmunity. Approximately 70% of your immune system, by most estimates, resides in and around your gut. The gastrointestinal tract is lined with the largest concentration of immune tissue in the human body, precisely because it represents the most significant interface between the outside world and your internal biology. Dr. Fasano's research at Massachusetts General Hospital established that 3 conditions must be simultaneously present for autoimmune disease to develop: genetic predisposition, an environmental trigger, and increased intestinal permeability. Remove any one of these 3, and autoimmune disease does not develop, regardless of genetic risk. The environmental trigger and the intestinal permeability mechanism are both directly addressed by what you consume daily. Research has shown that the oxidized metabolites of linoleic acid produced when seed oils are heated during cooking, disrupt the expression of tight junction proteins, specifically occludin and zonula occludens 1, which are key molecular fasteners that hold the cells of your intestinal wall together. When these proteins are disrupted, gaps form in the intestinal lining. Food particles, bacterial endotoxins, and lipopolysaccharides cross into the bloodstream. The immune system, encountering substances it was never designed to manage, mounts a response. Over time, through a process called molecular mimicry, that response can begin targeting the body's own tissues that structurally resemble the foreign particles. The gut lining is the gateway, and the key that opens it is sitting in your kitchen. Number 4 surprises my patients most, because it is not about what the oil does to you while you are cooking. It is about what it does to you while you sleep. Number 4, the stored linoleic acid in your adipose tissue continues generating inflammatory signals around the clock, independent of what you eat today. This is the mechanism that makes seed oil exposure uniquely insidious compared to most dietary threats. When you consume linoleic acid from refined seed oils, it is incorporated directly into your cell membranes and stored in your adipose tissue. The systematic review published in Advances in Nutrition, comparing adipose biopsy data collected in the United States from 1959 to 2008, documents that Americans now carry more than twice the concentration of linoleic acid in their body fat as they did 60 years ago. That stored linoleic acid does not sit inertly. Research has established that the half-life of linoleic acid in adipose tissue is approximately 1 to 2 years, meaning the linoleic acid you consumed last year is still measurably present in your stored body fat right now. And adipose tissue can take up to 3 to 4 years to fully equilibrate after a dietary change. As your body draws on fat stores for energy, during exercise, during overnight fasting, during any period of caloric restriction, it releases stored linoleic acid back into circulation. In the presence of oxidative stress, that released linoleic acid undergoes lipid peroxidation, the same oxidation process that produces 4-HNE, generating inflammatory aldehydes from within your own tissue, independent of any food you eat. This means that even if you changed your diet completely today, the inflammatory burden stored in your adipose tissue would continue generating immune-activating signals for months, potentially years, as your body gradually turns over its fat stores. The oil you consumed last year is still inside you, still present, still capable of releasing signals. And that brings us to the 5th mechanism, the one that explains why this is now showing up as a diagnosed autoimmune epidemic in countries that never had one before. Number 5. The industrialization of seed oils since the 1960s directly tracks the global rise in autoimmune disease, and the environmental causation is now documented in peer-reviewed epidemiological literature. The worldwide consumption of refined vegetable and seed oils increased dramatically between 1960 and 2010, driven by the replacement of traditional cooking fats, lard, tallow, butter, coconut oil, with industrially processed seed oils marketed as heart-healthy alternatives. Over the same period, the global incidence of autoimmune diseases has risen steadily and continues to rise. Research published in Environmental Health Perspectives and confirmed across multiple epidemiological reviews has established that autoimmune disease incidence has increased at a rate inconsistent with genetic drift alone. As one review stated directly, genetic factors alone cannot explain the significant rise in recent decades of diseases such as multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, systemic lupus erythematosus, and type 1 diabetes. The driving factors must be environmental. Research published in Environmental Triggers and Autoimmunity, a peer-reviewed paper by Vojdani, Pollard, and Campbell, established that genetic predisposition accounts for approximately 30% of all autoimmune diseases, with the remaining 70% attributed to environmental factors, including toxic chemicals, dietary components, gut dysbiosis, and infections. This figure has since been confirmed across multiple immunology reviews, including research published in Frontiers in Immunology. The timeline matches. The mechanism exists. The molecular pathway from daily seed oil consumption to chronic NF-κB activation, gut permeability, and autoimmune triggering is not speculative. It is published, replicated, and documented in peer-reviewed journals across immunology, gastroenterology, and toxicology. What has not happened, yet, is that information reaching the 15-minute appointment. That is the gap. And that is why we are here. I want to tell you about a patient I will call Sandra. Sandra was 52 years old, a cashier, meticulous about her health. She had never smoked, walked every evening, had reduced her red meat consumption to almost nothing on the advice of her previous doctor, and cooked almost every meal at home with what she described as the healthy oil, a large bottle of sunflower oil she kept next to the stove and refilled monthly. She came to me not for autoimmunity. She came because she was tired. Not the tiredness of a busy life. She knew that tiredness. This was something that sleep did not fix. A fatigue that lived inside her bones. Joint pain that moved. Hips 1 week, wrists the next, that no single blood panel had been able to explain. And a gut that had been, in her words, just off for 3 years. Her previous physician had told her it was perimenopause, stress, getting older. When I reviewed her history, I asked her a question she had never been asked. How hot does your oil get before you add food to the pan? She described heating the oil until it looked watery and fluid before adding anything. That's how you know it's ready, she said. She was right that the oil was hot enough to cook with. She was not aware that at those temperatures, well before any visible smoke, oxidative degradation and aldehyde production in polyunsaturated seed oils are already underway. Research by Professor Grutfeld's team at De Montfort University, published in Scientific Reports in 2019, has shown that even at everyday cooking temperatures, seed oils begin producing toxic aldehydes in concentrations that exceed WHO safe intake thresholds. Sandra had been doing this twice a day, every day, for years, specifically to cook the healthy home meals she was proud of. We ran a comprehensive inflammatory panel. Her NF-κB pathway markers were elevated. Her intestinal permeability markers were elevated. Her omega-6 to omega-3 ratio measured at 19:1. She did not receive an autoimmune diagnosis that day, but she left with something more immediately valuable, a clear understanding of the mechanism driving her symptoms and a specific plan to address it. The sunflower oil was the first thing to go. 6 months later, Sandra came back for a follow-up. Her fatigue, which had been present every single morning for 3 years, had lifted. Her joint pain had reduced significantly. Her gut symptoms had resolved almost entirely. She said something I have heard from patients in this position more times than I can count. Why did nobody tell me this sooner? If you have made it this far, you are taking your health seriously. And what I am about to cover is the most immediately actionable part of this conversation. Before we continue, I want to ask you something directly. Do you currently cook with canola oil, vegetable oil, sunflower oil, corn oil, or soybean oil? Do you eat packaged or processed foods more than twice a week? If the answer to either of those is yes, type the word oil in the comments right now. I read every single one. And that one word tells me something important about how many people watching this are currently inside the exposure window we have been discussing. If this video has already changed how you think about what is in your kitchen, tap subscribe. It takes 1 second, because what I am about to show you, the 3 specific, evidence-backed changes you can make starting today, are the most practical part of this entire conversation, and they cost you nothing. Let me be explicit about the evidence base for everything discussed today. Every mechanism described in this video is drawn from published, peer-reviewed research. I am not asking you to take any of this on faith. I am asking you to take it to your physician with the specific terms I have used today and ask specific questions. Ask about your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. Ask about intestinal permeability markers. Ask about your inflammatory cytokine profile. Ask about NF-kappa B pathway activation. These are the questions that the standard appointment does not create space for. You have to be the one to ask them. Here is what the research actually supports as actionable, right now, this week, at zero cost. 1. Remove refined seed oils from your kitchen entirely. This is not moderation. This is removal. Canola oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil, safflower oil. These are the primary dietary sources of industrially processed linoleic acid in the Western diet, and they are the primary drivers of the omega-6 to omega-3 imbalance that is keeping your immune system in a state of chronic activation. Replace them with stable cooking fats that do not oxidize rapidly at cooking temperatures, extra virgin olive oil for low to medium heat, and grass-fed butter, ghee, or coconut oil for higher heat cooking. These fats have been part of the human diet for thousands of years. Your immune system has a long evolutionary relationship with them. It does not have the same relationship with oxidized linoleic acid aldehyde degradation products, because those compounds did not exist in meaningful quantities in the human food supply until the middle of the 20th century. 2. Read ingredient labels for seed oils in packaged foods. Soybean oil alone accounts for the majority of added fat in the American processed food supply. It appears in bread, crackers, salad dressings, sauces, mayonnaise, protein bars, frozen meals, and restaurant food under terms including vegetable oil, partially hydrogenated oil, and expeller-pressed canola oil. None of these are neutral. All of them contribute to your daily linoleic acid load. You do not need to eliminate all packaged food overnight. You need to read 3 ingredients. If any of the first 3 ingredients in a packaged food is a refined seed oil, put it back. 3. Increase your omega-3 intake to begin correcting the ratio. While removing the source of excess omega-6 is the primary intervention, actively correcting the ratio from the omega-3 side accelerates recovery. Fatty fish, specifically wild-caught salmon, sardines, and mackerel, consumed 2 to 3 times per week, provide EPA and DHA, the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids your body uses most effectively in immune resolution. Research by Dr. Simopoulos documents that even modest increases in omega-3 intake can measurably shift the inflammatory balance. Combining reduction of omega-6 with increase of omega-3 produces a far more rapid and significant ratio correction than either intervention alone. None of this is complicated. None of it is expensive. Applied consistently over 3 to 6 months, these 3 changes directly address the omega-6 excess, the oxidized aldehyde exposure, and the inflammatory imbalance that underlie the autoimmune triggering mechanism we have discussed today. They do not guarantee resolution of an existing autoimmune condition, but they remove the daily fuel source that has been keeping your immune system in a state of chronic activation, and that changes everything downstream. Before I close, I want to ask you something specific. Which of the 5 mechanisms we covered today surprised you most? Was it the aldehyde production at everyday cooking temperatures, well before any visible smoke? Was it the stored linoleic acid in your adipose tissue, with a half-life of 1 to 2 years, generating inflammatory signals while you sleep? Was it the gut permeability connection that Dr. Fasano's research established as a necessary precursor for autoimmune disease to develop? Tell me in the comments right now, because the answer almost always shows me exactly where the public health knowledge gap is largest, and your answer directly shapes what I cover in the next video. There are 50 million people in this country with an autoimmune condition, millions more who are symptomatic but undiagnosed. The gap between where the research is and what reaches people in daily life is one of the most consequential communication failures in modern healthcare. Your comment closes a small part of that gap. It matters more than you know. Share this video, not for this channel, for the person in your life who has been exhausted for years and been told it is stress. For the person whose joints ache and who has been told it is just getting older. For the person who cooks every meal at home with a bottle of vegetable oil they bought specifically because they were trying to be healthy, and who has no idea that the mechanism we discussed today may be the explanation for the symptoms they have been living with for years. That share may be the most useful thing you do for their health today. Not tomorrow, today. If this video gave you something real, something you will still be thinking about when you open your kitchen cupboard tonight, subscribe. New research on immune health, inflammation, and the conversations the standard medical system does not make time for. That is what this channel is built for. I am Dr. Monty Fisher, and I will see you in the next one. Everything shared in this video is general educational information based on published, peer-reviewed research and is intended for informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for personalized medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you are currently managing an autoimmune condition, inflammatory disease, or any chronic health condition, please consult your physician before making changes to your diet or health routine. Individual results vary. This information is a starting point for a conversation with your doctor, not a replacement for one.